It will distribute your podcast for you so it's easy to be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to a special full episode of The Life Heart Wrestling by yours truly, Jamal Holness. And I know pretty much I've been away lately on a daily basis, and just started doing my usual full episodes every Wednesday. Of course, today is Thursday, February 25th. I'm late by one day, but don't get mad at me, guys. I've been really, really busy, trying hard to keep up with everybody, but and everyday work life as well. But today is a special episode. We are going to talk about the colossal stars of the beast, those tall men, the larger than life athletes, the superstars that are just bigger in reality themselves. I'm talking about the true giants of the WWE. And today we're going to discuss all of those big guys that paved the way for us, whether it was in WCW, WWE, ECW, wherever. But they have left a mark and made the name for themselves in WWE that will never be forgotten about how truly massive they were in and out of the ring. And this is gonna be really special here, because there's one superstar in particular that I've always been a big fan of Giant. This guy was, oh my God, super athletic. In my mind, he's probably one of the greatest gigantic superstars of all time. And that man is Vader. This one, we're gonna talk about Vader here, and we'll talk about other giants as well. But first, I want to bring attention to how, Vader was one of those like raw athletes that you can not only like give him the strength advantage in a power game, but also this guy can pretty much fly up the top rope and do a moonsault, a Vader bomb, or anything like that of some sort, and make it look easy as if he was a damn near cruiserweight. This is how amazing Vader is. If you were to see any one of his matches, right? If you go to the top rope, you're thinking, okay. He goes to the second rope, he's thinking he's gonna do a Vader bomb. But when he goes to that top rope, you're thinking entirely something different. It's kind of like a Bam Bam Bigelow used to do that moonsault. This kind of the same thing, but I think Vader, in my mind, was perfected a little bit better for a big man. And sometimes, not all the time, he hit the moonsault, but sometimes he actually did. And it's pretty freaking incredible how, he is athletically and agile, how Vader is. And it's so amazing to like watch this guy in the ring from bell to bell, and he can go for a long time for a big guy. He can last a long time in the ring, you know? His real name, he was used as Big Bam Vader back in WCW. His real name is Leon Allen White. And unfortunately, our good friend Liam Adam White had passed away on June 18th, 3 years ago in 2018. And, he left an impressive his mark in wrestling history to this very day. I didn't know this, but at these, all these attributes he has made himself in the companies he's wrestled in or even played in, because he actually played American professional football throughout his career, also performed in New Japan Pro Wrestling, World Championship Wrestling, of course, the World Federation, and All Japan Pro Wrestling as well during his 90s and 2000s run as a wrestler. And it's crazy because according to CBS Sports, White was widely regarded as one of the greatest super heavyweight pro wrestlers of all time. If you get a quote like that, talking about yourself from somebody else, especially from CBS Sports, that's huge. In my mind, that is pretty huge. And yeah, it takes nothing away from Big Man Vader, or I formerly known as Vader. Like, it's pretty amazing. It really is. Oh man. And during the time in this is interesting because in Japan, during this time in IWGP, well, New Japan Pro Wrestling, he had won the IWGP Championship and the WWE Championship 3 times each, becoming a Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion twice, the WWE United States Heavyweight Champion, and won a Battle Royal to main event 1993 Battle Balls of the pay-per-view event in WCW as well. It's amazing because he's headlined multiple pay-per-view events throughout WWE and WCW history. He was even inducted to the Wrestling Observation Newsletter Hall of Fame in 1996. During the time he had debuted in WWE that early that year. And it's pretty amazing here because he was actually a part of the American Wrestling Association from 1985 through 1987. And it's kind of weird, but if you didn't notice, he had the name of Baby Bull. which was later changed to Bull Power. But I'm thinking, with that size and massive like hernia, it's pretty crazy not to like think of him like that too. As being like a Bull Power baby bull type wrestler. You know, and it's pretty cool because he described his attire as well. Had white horn his skills during his time, and his ring work was so improved significantly to the point that he was booked for a match against Stan Hansen. The WWE Hall of Fame Stan Hansen got inducted in 2016 Hall of Fame for the AEWA World Heavyweight Championship, where he was defeated, of course. But still, just to be on that point, and for a short time in AEW, and just a main event, a show with Stan Hansen, who was one of the most voracious, toughest SOB wrestlers at the time for AWA World Heavyweight Championship, that's pretty amazing. It really is. Even get this, in 1986 to 1991, he was a part of the Catch Wrestling Association. It's pretty amazing, yeah. Because he also took that name Bull Power and ran with this event as well, ran through his tenure through his company as well. And during the summer of 1986, he took part in a 3-day tournament for the Vienna Catch Cup in Austria, where he made it to the final before losing to Klaus Wallace. I guess Klaus Wallace at the time was a pretty professional wrestler as well, and pretty good in ring skills as well, from what I've heard. And Vader eventually went to the finals, but evidently, he lost. It wasn't too bad because on March 22nd, 1987, he won his first championship, the CWA World Heavyweight Championship, defeating Otto Wanz in Denver, Colorado, ending Wanz's reign of nearly 9 years, and his only title change in the United States at that time. That's pretty amazing too. I think that makes history right there by winning a championship. It also having a first time change in the United States of America as well is a accomplishment in my book, especially from a guy like Vader as well. He only held the championship nearly 4 months before losing it back to Wang on July 11th in Graz, Austria as well. But in December of 1987, he participated in his second tournament, the the Bremen Cup Catch, the Bremen Catch Cup in Germany, where he defeated Rambo in the finals to win his first tournament. So after losing this one, eventually gets to another tournament, and then he wins that one by defeating Rambo in the finals. So it's not too bad here. And get this though, this is really interesting. A year later, Otto Wanz retired, and the CWA World Title was being held up. Bull Power would defeat Rambo to win that vacant title for a third and final time, a three-time CWA Heavyweight Championship. And this time, his title reign, he held on to the title over 6 months before losing to Rambo in Graz, Austria. So I'm pretty sure that time the CWA championship was being back and forth potatoed, between these two guys. But also 5 months later, he defeated Tatsumi Fujinami, who was also a WWE Hall of Famer, to become the inaugural CWA Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship. Of course, he vacated the title in 1992 before signing with WCW. That's pretty weird as well, but also pretty cool to have. And I want to talk a little bit about his New Japan Pro Wrestling tenure because although originally he signed the All Japan Pro Wrestling, the owner at that time, Giant Baba, traded White's contract over to New Japan Pro Wrestling in 1987 after consideration. And upon joining the NGPW, White also was given the name Big Van Vader. That's where Big Van Vader was born. It was born over Japan, not over here in the United States of America. But it's pretty amazing. Before going to America, he's really big and made a name for himself in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Where also this time, of course, changing to his appearance, he began to wear a black wrestling mask. His new identity was based on a strong warrior of the same name from Japanese folklore. He was inducted into the crown jewel of the Takeshi Porosu Donda stable that was managed by Takeshi Katano. Vader challenged Antonio Inoki, who was already defeated Ruku Kroshu and defeated a worn-down Inoki. The pro Inoki audience rioted, severely rioted, because everybody that knew Takashi was a big fan since he was born and made in Japan as well. And this resulted in this South, the New Japan Wrestling being ran from the Sumo Hall, its home arena. So imagine this: the fans rioted because their hometown lost to somebody who was a big statue like Big Van Vader. They rioted, and then at the same time, they just banned the organization from its own home arena, Sumo Hall. It's pretty steep, in a way. But it's amazing because this ban remained in effect until 1989, when New Japan Pro Wrestling did their first show back in Sumo Hall on February 22nd. That same year, 1989. That's pretty crazy. It really is. But it's pretty cool because things are really fair from now. Because in January 1991, Vader defeated Fujinami to earn himself a third IWGP Heavyweight title reign. During this match, Vader began bleeding from the eye, which resulted in surgery when he returned to the United States. This reign was short-lived, however, Vader lost the title back to Fujinami on March 4th. At this point, WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling reaching out a tentative working agreement. This solidified Vader as he could now have a schedule coordinated far more easily. This helped alleviate him his difficulty in gaining notoriety in WCW, as he previously infrequent appearance did not allow the audience to see him very often. So less TV time, but it still helped with his mental stability at the time. It wasn't too bad as well. All right, this is where he began that agreement between Japan Pro Wrestling and WCW at the time was very huge, and this is how Vader started working for WCW at the time. Vader originally signed to WCW in 1990, but was only used sparingly until 1991. Vader's first match in WCW took place on July 7, 1990 at the Great American Bash, where he defeated Tom Zink in a little over 2 minutes. 7 months later, he returned to Wrestle War, even battled Stan Hanson in a double disqualification, which to me, that's probably one of the greatest matches in WCW at the time in 1990. So if you go back to the network and look at that Wrestle War, look at that match between him and Stan Hanson, those two beat the crap out of each other that I could not comprehend. Think this is probably one of the greatest best matches of all time. This is pretty surreal. It really is. 8 months later, he returned at Halloween Havoc to take place in the first ever Team of Horror match, which is also famous on WWE Network as one of those big time wrestling matches we ever used in professional wrestling history. Go back to Halloween Havoc and watch that match because that match was pretty incredible. It also has Sting, Lex Luger, and Cactus Jack in the match as well. He took place in the first ever Chamber of Horrors match in which Vader's team lost due to Abdullah Butcher. This is real. Being electrocuted by their own partner, Cactus Jack. So Cactus Jack turned heel in this matchup and electrocuted their partner for Vader's team, Abdullah the Butcher. And that was real electricity. He was really being shocked in that electrical chair. So it's pretty surreal. It's kind of scary. It's kind of hard to watch. Viewers' discretion is advised, but I would definitely advise to go back and watch that match because that match was pretty surreal. It really was. 2 months later, he would take part in Starcade's Lethal Lottery, where he teamed up with Mr. Hughes to battle to defeat Rick Steiner and the Night Stalker, who was suffering with injury Diamond Stud, to advance in the Battle Royal, which he was eventually eliminated. It's pretty amazing. Vader was really agile at the time because Vader even sent Nikita Koloff into retirement, legitimately sprained in the back of the Jabba Joe Thurman, sending him to the hospital. And yet, at Starcade, later in that year, Vader had lost his Sting in the finals of the King of Cable tournament. 2 days later, Vader really defeated Simmons, who was Ron Simmons, aka Farouk, if people didn't know that by now, by taking advantage of a shoulder injury of Simmons to retain the WCW Championship on March 11, 1993. Vader lost the WCW World Championship to Sting, but regained it 6 days later. Upon returning to WCW, Mick Foley, then wrestling as Cactus Jack, defeated Vader via countout on April 7th episode of Saturday Night, WCW Saturday Night. And during the match, Cactus Jack suffered a broken nose and needed 27 stitches on his face. His match was, I mean, to be honest, this match was very edited by the broadcast, which kind of sucks because that match was very amazing itself. And I guess WCW didn't want to show the excessive blood loss in that matchup by Mick Foley, so yeah. But in the rematch on April 24th, Vader powerbomb on Cactus Jack on the concrete floor outside the ring, resulting in Jack suffering a concussion and temporary loss of feeling in his left hand and leg. In the meantime, Vader began to feud with new rival WCW, the Davey Boy Smith, aka the British Bulldog. Well, he was not the British Bulldog in WCW, plus in WWE. They met at Slim Arena in May for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Vader lost by DQ when he hit Smith with the chair through to the title. And then this thing is interesting because Vader and Sid Vicious, better known as Psycho Sid, had then formed a partnership and called themselves the Master of the Powerbomb. So it's amazing. Not only that one time WWE where Vader and Psycho Sid faced off at Indian House spared alive, but they were a team and called themselves Master Powerbomb because you gotta admit both their powerbombs were damn sure effective. You know, so this is actually pretty amazing for people that didn't know that Vader and Psycho Sid were a tag team in WCW known as the Masters of the Powerbomb. That's pretty surreal. At the time, they were defeated by Smith and his new partner Sting at the Beach Blast in July. Following which, Vader and Cactus Jack feud were restarted as Cactus Jack was cleared to return for Halloween Havoc to face Vader in a Texas death match. Ladies and gentlemen, if you gotta watch anything from WCW, watch the Texas death match between Vader and Cactus Jack. That match was fucking incredible. Sorry for using my language, but it really, it really was that incredible. It's really amazing. Go back and watch that match. Vader won with Harley Race stun jack with a cattle prod, which is kind of like an electrical shock to the system. Sorry, I had to use that for the speed error. Sorry, guys. And at that, kept him down for a 10 count. On March 16th, 1994, Foley lost his right ear in a match with Vader in Munich, Germany. So I'm guessing, like, if you know how, they know how Michael lost his right ear and why cutting off his still this mangled. That's the reason in this match in Germany that happened. And at the time during this match, Foley's head was trapped between the ropes which were under excessive tension, causing the ear to be torn off. Just like that. You know, it's pretty surreal. It really is. Alright, it's another interesting fact though. In January 1995, Vader had ended his alliance with Harley Race because in real life, Race was involved in a automatic car crash, and Race eventually Harley Race did leave WCW at the time. Vader confronted the World Heavyweight Champion Hulk Hogan, who had gone to WCW 2 years prior at this time, and informed him that he could not avoid the monster. The two met at Super Bowl V, but Vader managed to kick out of Hogan's leg drop after counting one. Not many people kick out of Hogan's leg drop, but Vader did a count of one at Super Bowl, so this is pretty amazing. Referee not knocked out before Vader hit the Vader bomb on Hogan. Ric Flair ran to the ring, made a 3 count, and then attacked Hogan, resulting in Vader's qualification. But a rematch was signed for a strap match at the inaugural uncensored pay-per-view, WWE Uncensored. And Flair once again inverted, but this time to drag to avoid revealing his presence. A match cost Vader the match by getting himself carried by Hulk Hogan as touched all 4 turnbuckle paths. That's the only way to win this strap match was to touch all 4 turnbuckles at the time to win the match. And Vader was stripped of the WWE United States Championship on April 23rd, 1995 for multiple violent offenses. However, Vader gained another opportunity to win the World Heavyweight Championship from Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach inside a steel cage. He conspired with Kevin Sullivan in the Dungeon of Doom to gain a psychological edge before the encounter, which Vader lost when Hogan escaped the cage. Because it seems like Vader's rivalry with Hulk Hogan kind of goes his biggest letdown because he lost one match against Hogan. Not only did he finish with Flair, but now by his stable, Dungeon of Doom. So it's pretty surreal here. And even at the time when he lost that, he then restarted his feud with Flair based on frustration of Flair's constant interference in his time matches and Flair's annoyance in his inability to defeat Hogan. So, Clash of Champions 31, Vader defeated Flair and Arn Anderson a 2-on-1 handicap match. Following the cement, Hogan drew interested in Vader and asked him for assistance in developing a feud with the Dungeon of Doom. By asking to join him, Randy Savage, and Sting for War Games. Vader complied, but storyline was never developed as shortly after. Unfortunately, Vader was fired from WCW after getting involved with the locker room brawl with Paul Orndorff. So, kind of sucked. Because so now, because of his violent antics backstage in a locker room brawl with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, later eventually led to his firing from WCW, his departure for the company. So, at this time now, you have Vader, who is now filming vignettes to make his debut in the World Wrestling Federation, the WWE. That's right. Big Man Vader has come to WWE simply as Vader. So, it's pretty cool because in the weeks leading to the 1996 Royal Rumble event, WWE, Vader's debut was heavily hyped on television and is billed as the man they called Vader. Although Vince McMahon had originally wanted to rename him the Mastodon. Of course, that didn't work out because I like Vader a lot more than the Mastodon. That was kind of a weird saying. So it's pretty weird, but in due time, they eventually was like, oh, okay, let's go with Vader. Vader sounds a lot better. So he made his first WWE debut appearance as being a participant in the 30-man Royal Rumble matchup, where he entered number 13. He eliminated Jake Roberts, Doug Gilbert, and one member of the SWAT team, and Savio Vega as well. But his fight really drew attention when he started crossing paths with WWE Hall of Famer Yokozuna. But later, Vader was eliminated with Yokozuna by Shawn Michaels before he re-entered the ring and started assaulting everybody, including Michaels. So, even though Vader was only vulnerable, his destruction continued the next night on Raw. Because this is probably one of those off moments in WWE's history that you don't want to see but actually happened. So this is pretty much true here. Because next night on Raw, before assaulting WWE officials and eventually the WWE president at the time, Gorilla Monsoon, demanded that Vader cease his attack or receive a Vader bomb for his efforts. At the assault, Vader was suspended for his actions, though in reality he needed time off for a shoulder injury. So it's pretty great. Even though, as far as I know, Vader was suspended for attacking President Colossal, but he really needed time off because of it was shoulder. So he had a severe shoulder injury that he needs to heal at the time. So it's pretty surreal here. Kind of sucks. But Jim Cornette's campaign for Vader's reinstatement, by the time Vader returned, Yokozuna had left Cornette management. And in February's Indian House 6 preview event, Vader appeared during Yokozuna's match against the British Bulldog. As Yokozuna was about to pin the Bulldog, Vader attacked him and handcuffed him and severely beat him up while being handcuffed. This was supposed to be a 1-1 encounter at WrestleMania. The match became a six-man tag, pitting Vader with Owen Hart and the British Bulldog against Yokozuna, Ahmed Johnson, and Jake the Snake Roberts. With stipulation, if Yokozuna's team had won the match, he would get 5 minutes alone to do whatever he wanted to Jim Cornette in the ring. Of course, it never occurred because Vader's team won when Vader pinned Jake the Snake Roberts at the time. So, later on here, we had a Vader that started his feud with Shawn Michaels. And especially led to a six-man tag team match at Indian House 9 International Incident, where it was with the same team of Vader, Owen Hart, British Bulldog faced up against Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, and Psycho Sid. And Vader had a clean pin after Vader bomb on Shawn Michaels to win the match. So you're thinking, holy crap, okay, Vader pinned the champion. I'm pretty sure he's going to have a title shot. We're going to really see the real Mastodon. I'm using this nickname now. Mastodon. I'm not calling Vader Mastodon. I'm just going to use this as a nickname. The real Mastodon, Vader, had eventually received a time match against Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam that year. And it's pretty surreal because I think this is like 3 matches in one here. Vader originally won the match by countout, but however realized the title could not change hands, of course Jim Cornette would say restart the match and call Shawn Michaels out for being a wussy. I'm not gonna say the real word that rhymes with it, but starts with a P. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys know what I'm saying with this. But no, the match restarted. Of course, Vader was having Michaels with Jim Cornette's tennis racket. Then Jim Cornette eventually started the match again, and then Shawn Michaels agreed to it. So this time, Shawn Michaels will hit the switch music and pin Vader 1, 2, 3 to retain the championship. So it's pretty crazy here. So later on, Vader refused Psycho Sid, and it had this amazing one-on-one match at In-House Buried Alive, which Vader did lose. And then Psycho Sid won, and he even beat Shawn Michaels as Survivor Series become the WWE champion. I kind of felt like this is a letdown Vader's career because Vader wasn't really doing nothing after this, so it's pretty surreal. I'm thinking, okay, hopefully next time is a better year, but 1997 wasn't really that much of a better year because even though he did get a couple of over the Undertaker, which is very highly unlikely, when Undertaker's feud with Mankind at the time. But he's being managed by Paul Bearer now because the Undertaker's turn against the Undertaker. Paul Bear's turn against the Undertaker at the 1996 SummerSlam. Did you get Miss Wrestler 1996? Sorry, SummerSlam '96 was kind of like a historic event at the time. So yeah, this is pretty crazy. So Vader started aligning himself with Mankind, which they both fought Owen Hart and the Bulldog for the tag team titles at WrestleMania 13, in which that both teams were counted out, so the match was thrown out the window. And yeah, it's just pretty crazy. Owen Hart, Vader, sorry, not Owen Hart, Vader would eventually turn babyface and start feuding with, Team Canada, well, aka the Hart Foundation at that point, especially when teamed up with Patriot in that flag match at Bad Blood '97. Even though they lost the match, I think, Vader being a good guy, it was okay. But I'm like, no, Vader's a better heel. In my opinion, I think everybody would agree that Vader's a better heel than a babyface. Because they start feuding Goldust, and Goldust has this energy transformation going through his divorce with Marlene at the time, aka Terry Reynolds. And it was like, okay, Vader's not really a master anymore. It's just a jobber. Because if Vader wasn't even featured at WrestleMania 14, which he should have, not to discredit anybody that wasn't 14, because everybody that wrestled on the WrestleMania 14 card deserved to be at that event, but still, it was like, no Vader on there. It's like, you know. But WrestleMania 14 was still successful though, because they had Mike Tyson. So, and he had first ever Taker versus Kane match, and he had matches like, the first ever tag team Dustin match and The Rock versus Ken Shamrock. So. Wrestling 14 is still a success on its own without Vader. So, but yeah, you gotta admit though, in Vader's time during his wrestling career, he had really proven himself a lot. So, I gotta think Vader's one of those true giants in the WWE that you never ever forget. All right, when we come back, we'll think of another giant to talk about here. We got two more. Talk about two more giants here, and we're right back after these messages. All right, welcome back on this full episode of God Have Heart Wrestling by yours truly, Jamal Honus. And another true giant, of course, I cannot forget about this one because there's nobody that's more of a giant on here. But this one's not going to be about Andre the Giant because we are going to talk about him in the next segment. But we're talking about somebody that is really big. It does big things. And if you heard this yesterday, he was currently signed by AEW All Elite Wrestling. And that's right, the Giant, the Big Show, Paul White. Talk about him next because I can't think of any giant that has so much success in the wrestling business, has made headlines literally anywhere he's went, than Paul White the Big Show. It's pretty amazing. And people, if you don't know this, that Big Show is a multiple time world champion, whether it was in WCW, ECW, or any world championship in WWE. That's pretty amazing. It really is. So no, don't take away the fact that, Big Show is not wrestling full time anymore, but anytime he does come out, he really does make a big impact, no matter who he's wrestling against. You know. So it's pretty amazing because people didn't notice about the fact that when Big Show first appeared in wrestling was WCW. And get this, on his first night, he wrestled against Hulk Hogan, which was Halloween Havoc, '95. And go back to that matchup. There was actually multiple times in one night where Big Show and Hollywood Hulk Hogan are battling in WCW at the time, and it's pretty amazing because they had this sumo monster truck match, which was not wrestling. It was two big sumo trucks, one by Paul White, one by the Hulk Hogan, and they battled on top of this roof and at Halloween Havoc. And it's pretty amazing because Hulk Hogan did win that matchup, but there was a brawl afterwards where they're on top of the roof, and Big Show supposedly falls off the roof, and it's like everybody's wondering, is Big Show dead? Is Paul White dead? Is Well, technically, he was named the Giant in WCW, but at the time I was like, holy shit. After watching this event, because I just watched How We Have It 95 recently, and I realized, damn, this preview is kind of heavily underrated, Mainly because of the two-part match between Hulk Hogan and Paul White, the Giant, So it's pretty amazing because you have these two people battling out here. Of course, Hulk Hogan, worldwide ranked superstar. Everybody knows Hulk Hogan is. From his success, really, in AEW and WWE, led him to come into WCW 2 years prior, becoming one of the biggest names ever in wrestling history. So you have this giant who comes to WWE, and later on that night, they fought for the WCW World Championship, which Hulk Hogan was the champion, led by Jimmy Hart. But if you go back and watch it, Jimmy Hart eventually turns on Hulk Hogan and lines up with the Giant, and even though it was a lot of confusion in that matchup, Big Show defeated Hogan to win the WWE Championship on his first night in wrestling. Who could say that they had their first professional match in a major company, WCW at the time, and won the WWE World Championship? That is pretty incredible. In my mind, like, that's what made me really want to tune in and see what is Johnny gonna do next. Like, his first night, he's already world champion. This is pretty crazy. You know, evidently he did lose the championship. That's a Hogan, and still continued to be the amazing giant that he was. Evidently, when WCW's outsiders, Hall and Nash, had formed NWO with Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach '96, which was deemed one of the greatest moments in ever wrestling history. Hulk Hogan turned heel that night and formed the NWO. The Giant would eventually be part of NWO for about a year or two. So, and it's pretty crazy because he had wrestled and continued to win a championship after championship. Later on, evidently leading to his departure from WCW and getting signed by businessman WWE. It's pretty crazy because not people know this, but Big Show actually, well, he was named Big Show. It's technically called Paul White by Michael Cole on commentary for the first few weeks in the WWE. But Big Show made his debut on Valentine's Day between a match between Austin and McMahon at WWF St. Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view event that was on Valentine's Day in 1999. And the winner of that steel cage match was supposed to go to WrestleMania. So Big Show comes up through the ring, sends Austin to three sides of the steel cage, and then he picks up Austin, throws him like Austin like a little baby into the cage. The cage evidently gained weight, broke, one of his sides came flying off, and Austin's feet touched the floor. Evidently, even though Big Show was there to help Mr. Man, it kind of backfired because Austin won the match, and Austin would be granted the title shot against The Rock for WrestleMania 15. So it's pretty surreal here. And then, of course, when he comes next time, February 15th, if identically costs Mick Foley the championship, in which The Rock regained the championship back that night, make sure to ensure that it's going to be Austin versus The Rock WrestleMania. So, of course, this giant comes into WWE. He's now being called the Big Show, and he's aligned himself with Mr. Man and his corporate team. Of course, with The Rock as the champion. This is pretty amazing because on March 22nd, Big Show had his first professional wrestling match in WWE against Austin. And get this is in the main event, in which WWE was calling it the biggest match of Raw history, Austin and Paul White in the main event WrestleMania and the main event Monday Night Raw before WrestleMania 15 on March 22nd. And it's pretty cool because you will see Big Show dominate this match against Austin, and evidently it took a stunner and three chair shots. Austin pinned the Big Show, which Big Show gained his first loss in the W at the time, thanks to Mankind being the special referee that night also. So it's pretty amazing. So when Big Show had this match against McFloyd WrestleMania 15, and he lost, and then because even though Big Show had lost the match and evidently knocked out Mr. Man because Mr. Man slapped him across the face, if I remember correctly, and Big Show was like, okay, we're gonna make Big Show babyface now. He's not gonna be heel anymore. He's gonna be a good giant. Whatever the hell that means. I don't think there's such thing. There's no such thing as being called a good giant. Those two things just don't go together. A giant to me, in definition, is supposed to be somebody that's ruthless, colossal, can beat up anything and take anything they want. Just complete, utter dominance. You know, so it's pretty cool. Big Show and the Anti-Knife, which is his first unit of WWE. It's pretty cool. He had this, rivalry, being part of the Union, which to me, I get watching WWE Raw at the time and seeing how the Union formed together as being former workers, Mr. Man, who all evidently got screwed up Mr. Man in some kind of way. But it was like, I don't know. Big Show, Mankind, Test, and Cash and Rob as part of the Union eh, it was okay, but it just didn't make sense, The corporation makes sense because you fuse the corporation, Mystery Darkness. But the Union, I was like, they could have came with a better name and more talent too, because. But yeah, we part of the Union, and it's pretty amazing. If you go back to the episode of Monday Night Raw on May 3rd, 1995, 1996, I mean 1999. Sorry, I'm messing up the episode here, guys. I'm sorry, but evidently, like wrestling the Undertaker for the No, it wasn't for the championship. No, that was on June 10th, I believe, or June 6th. But yeah, evidently wrestling the Undertaker that night, and the Undertaker hit Big Show and cracked a baseball bat. I think it wasn't a big bat, but it was one of those miniature sized bat, but still made out of wood. Old Big Show sitting, I'm thinking, and Big Show just, even though he's carried out, he was still walking. I'm like, holy shit, that is crazy. He thought that was real. Like, Jesus Christ. That is one of the craziest I've ever seen in WWE. Another human hit another human being in the square in the head with a wooden baseball bat, a wooden club as they called it back in the day. But it's like, Jesus Christ. The picture was okay, you know? Evidently he was okay. Because several weeks later, he was going to avenge the Undertaker in Boston on Monday Night Raw and chose the Undertaker through the ring, which is one of my favorites of WWE Raw's history, where Big Show chose the Undertaker straight to hell, as Jim Ross described it. And so it's pretty cool. You know, to see that. Evidently, Big Show would kind of slowly turn back heel and started rivaling against Kane. Evidently, they fought the King of the Ring and full load at pay-per-view events. And then, this is real interesting right here. I think this was a really good point in Big Show's career. Because Big Show also talked about this on his documentary, A Giant's World, on WWE Network. But Big Show had teamed up with The Undertaker following full load pay-per-view event in 1999, leading towards SummerSlam when they defeated Kane and S-Pac for the tag team champions at the time. That was Big Show's first title win, I believe, at the time in WWE. And Big Show had described that him working the Undertaker was kind of like a learning tree for him to become a better wrestler and learn from the dead man himself. So you gotta give Undertaker a lot of credit for making Big Show the real true giant that it really was at the time and being this ruthless, colossal individual. So it's pretty amazing to like hear that as well, you know. And of course, Big Show and Undertaker both won tag champs twice together because the second time occurred on SmackDown, which was a brand new show in WWE at the time, on September 16th, I believe, in that first ever Buried Alive tag team matchup. And go back and watch that match too, because that match had a lot of things happening in that match that was pretty surreal. You see Kane in the match, you see China Triple H, and even Austin interfered in that match too as well. Even though the match was Undertaker Big Show facing Mankind and The Rock for the tag team championships, you know. But that match was pretty surreal, dude. It really was. And Big Show and Undertaker did win that match that night, you know. So now you got Big Show, the former tag team champion. Where does Big Show go next from here? This is where things kind of got weird. There was a storyline where Big Show's supposedly dad was gone, well, I guess passed away, and the Big Boss Man was truly one of my favorites. I don't know why. I love the Big Boss Man. I love this character. I didn't like the Big Boss Man from the early '90s, but when he came out to WWE '98, that was my favorite time. Big Boss Man. Like he was such an asshole. Like he was ruthless. Who's gonna tell somebody that their father died? Hire a fake officer. Like that's crazy for real. Oh my God, the Big Boss Man was it's evil. Shish, but in a way that would really stick to you. You know. But yeah, at the time where, Big Boss Man and Big Show had this rivalry, which, he told his dad that his dad, he comes on Monday Night Raw, says this poem from a card, and that was pretty degrading himself. I never heard nothing derogatory than when Big Boss Man said about Big Show's supposedly dad in that storyline on the episode of Monday Night Raw. And then eventually, lead to a Survivor Series matchup. But evidently, it became a 4-on-1, Big Show being by himself, and Big Boss Man teamed with Vincera, Midian, and Albert. Prince Albert at the time, who are also giants. So this was probably a gigantic Survivor Series elimination matchup. But evidently, Big Show won the match in like less than 2 minutes because he eliminated all of them, in which Big Boss Man actually ran away from the Big Show that night. It's pretty surreal. But this is not where the Big Show's thing stopped. And the same night, at the 1999 Survivor Series, even though there was a story where Austin got ran over by somebody, was taken out, and in the championship match between him, The Rock, and Triple H. It was awesome to be one of the challengers, but Shane McMahon has stated that it was still going to be a triple threat matchup with the replacement. So yeah, Triple H comes out, then The Rock comes out, and the referee announces, and here's the Big Show, oh well, and the Big Show comes out here, I'm like, oh shit, the Big Show's a championship matchup. I was excited, because I was like, shit, probably want to see the Big Show win the championship. And thanks to Mr. Man, I don't know, I could say closer to school Triple H, but in a way that everyone wanted to see that rather than what happened to previous Survivor Series. But, yeah. So, next to Mr. Man, Big Show had pinned Triple H to win the WWE Championship. For the first time in his career, Big Show was now on top. He was the champion. So it's pretty exciting time to watch it at the time. And it's pretty surreal. Even though Big Show had lost the championship to Triple H on the first episode on Raw on January 3rd, 2000, it was pretty cool. Because Big Show never really left the main event scene. He should have won a Royal Rumble matchup. He would defeat The Rock and No Way Out. Evidently, Big Show would main event WrestleMania 2000 with The Rock, Cactus Jack, and Cactus Jack's last night wrestling, and the championship plate. You know, the Big Show was first eliminated. Big Show, to me, was still doing good work at the time. You know, evidently, Big Show did return babyface and started feuding with Angle, Shane McMahon, get Take Off TV a couple months here, returned in the year 2001 at the Royal Rumble, and started kind of like a mini feud with The Rock, but evidently was doing these weird matches because he had this hardcore match. But I wouldn't say this is a weird match. This is actually a fun, entertaining match. This is not one of the best matches, not one of the greatest matches, but this was an entertaining match. If you go back to WrestleMania 17 and watch Big Show face Kate and Raven for the hardcore title triple matchup, they were spewing to the crowd, they would go to the back until I think Big Show and Kate slammed each other through two walls, and pretty amazing here. And Big Show, his big self, getting in a golf cart with Raven attached to him and just driving down there is pretty surreal. That's kind of funny to watch there. Evidently, Big Show did lose that matchup, but not really too bad though. So I say 2001 one wasn't really the Big Show's year as far as matches go because it was pretty mediocre. So as a Big Show 2001 was like, nah, you know. But the following year, 2002, even though he had missed out on WrestleMania 18 in Toronto at the time, Big Show will still be evidently be really secure as far as um people goes. Big Giant Shooter Dance and Wrestling. So this is where I think the way Big Show started really being the Big Show, like the most dangerous person in WWE today. Because even though Big Show evidently told Barry Bischoff, who was the new general manager at the time, to take his job and shove it. Well, not like same thing like Austin said, we walked down WWE in '02, but evidently Stephanie May had bought Stephanie May had bought Big Show's contract. The Big Show is now exclusive part of SmackDown every Thursday night. So evidently, after Undertaker had got them with Brock Lesnar inside Hell in a Cell at No Mercy Town 2, evidently Big Show the next night would take out the Undertaker, cause the Undertaker to be off TV for the next 3 months, and has now been in contention for Brock Lesnar's WWE Championship. This is pretty cool. I like actually watching Big Show and Brock Lesnar because these are two men here, and you don't really expect somebody to just toss around the Big Show or toss around Brock Lesnar like they were cruiserweights, like toys. But these two guys, every time these two hook up in the ring with each other, this is gonna be probably 5, 10 minutes the most of explosive action. So it was a question to go into the Texas rosters. Can Brock Lesnar defeat the Big Show? Even though Brock Lesnar was the next big thing, he had defeated. All right, sorry for interruption, guys. But going back to what I was saying, of course, when at the time, Big Show and Brock Lesnar's feud leading to Texas rosters was about, can Brock Lesnar defeat the Big Show? Because Brock Lesnar's been dominant. He is one that came from by defeating Rob Van Dam in '02. Yeah, defeated The Rock on SummerSlam to become the Undisputed Champion. Defeated Ric Flair. Defeated Hulk Hogan. He has beaten The Undertaker twice, involved in Hell in a Cell, at No Mercy. So it's like, damn, can Brock Lesnar beat the Big Show? Then we get to MSG, Master Garden, Talented Survivor Series, and evidently, you know, Big Show, who was helped by Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman has screwed the Brock Lesnar out the championship and won the championship. Big Show is now a two-time WWE champion. So it's pretty crazy here, you know? Evidently, Big Show lost the championship to Kurt Angle next month at Armageddon, thanks to Brock Lesnar. Before Kurt Angle turned heel the next SmackDown Thursday night after that. So also, Big Show's also a great compliment was wrestling Undertaker along with A-Train at WrestleMania 19. And we know they lost. Big Show was pretty dominant in that matchup. One of Big Show's highs of his career, I would say, probably would be when he took on Lesnar on SmackDown in June of '03. And when Brock Lesnar went to the top rope with the Big Show, performing an actual suplex, a superplex off the top rope, and the ring completely imploded. It's one of those great histories, the moments that happened on SmackDown over the past number of years, and that nobody will ever forget. I mean, that's like the first time the ring had been broken down like that. So that's pretty insane. It really was. And I'd probably say another good moment was when the Big Show had defeated Eddie Guerrero at No Mercy '03 to become the United States champion after chokeslamming Eddie Guerrero on the front windshield of his car. So, Big Show kind of cheated a little bit there, but Big Show would be proclaimed as the United States champion. So, kind of sucks, but, that's how life goes, I guess, in a way. Big Show will get to have John Cena's first WrestleMania match against him in '04 MSG, losing it, dropping the United States Championship to John Cena in the opening contest of WrestleMania 20 that night. Even though Big Show would go out of the ring for the past couple months, returned in September of '04 to SmackDown with a fresh new cut. That's when he really became bald. And, evidently, at the time, in 2005, feuding with JBL's WWE Championship. And that first ever barbed wire steel cage match for No Mercy. I mean, No Mercy, No Way Tower 5. It's pretty surreal, too, as well. Because it's the first time we ever seen anything of that concept. Even though Big Show and JBL were both bust open that day, and JBL was still finding a ring to retain the championship by coming out through the bottom rope after Big Show choking JBL through the ring itself. Pretty crazy. Another highlight of Big Show's career was him and Kane winning the tag team championships in the fall of 2005. And of course, lead to Big Show turning on WWE's Raw and SmackDown and becoming ECW in '06. Now, that's pretty cool, though, because on 4th of July, Big Show would defeat Robin to become the ECW champion. And Big Show held on to the championship for a good 6 months, all the way, well, not all 6 months, about 5 months, all the way through December to December, where ECW started time Bobby Lashley would defeat the Big Show to become the ECW champion. And Big Show would take the whole 2007 off, as coming back in 2008, having that Money Mayweather match feud ever since 24. Later on that year, with feud with various superstars, such as the Great Khali and themselves, and evidently feuding with The Undertaker later on that year, and leading to 2009, feuding with John Cena Edge for World Championship since 25. And this is pretty cool because this is one of my favorite Big Show highlight career moments where he teamed up with Jericho and started becoming shows to Jericho and becoming WWE's Undisputed Tag Team Champions for 6 months prior before falling into DX at the first ever inaugural TLC pay-per-view event in 2009. Evidently, Big Show's career, I felt like, was winding down at this point. Well, a little bit, because he was still active, wrestling matches, as he with the Miz become tag champs again, losing about 2 months later after WrestleMania 26. And, it was okay. But Big Show didn't really do much in 2010 throughout his career goes. But then until 2011, he was still doing mediocre matches and all that. Team tag champs with Kane again that year, 2011. And then he started feuding with Mark Henry. Because Mark Henry had put Big Show in supposedly Hall of Pain, which was, I think, was a thing in 2011. I got it. I love Mark Henry world champion. I kind of wish Mark Henry held the WWE champion as well. I'm a big Mark Henry fan, so yeah. Evidently, when they wrestled at Vengeance 2011, and again, just like the Broncos and Big Show situation, the ring imploded with these two again, and which was also Mark Henry to retain the Royal Rumble Championship. Evidently, Big Show would beat Mark Henry at TLC in 2011 to win the World Championship in that chairs match, and it had Money Bank cashing on by Daniel Bryan and dropping the chance to Daniel Bryan about a minute or two later. So, yeah, pretty surreal there. But evidently, it would not stop Big Show's success, as he would become champion since 2008. Later on that year, would beat Sheamus at Hell in a Cell 2012 to win the World Heavyweight Championship. That was Big Show's first ever World Heavyweight Championship win at that time. And it's a pretty good title for you because he dropped the chance to then WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio in January of 2013 in that last man standing match. So it wasn't too bad. As far as Big Show's career goes at WWE, I gotta admit, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Even though evidently Big Show in 2016, 2017 will start feuding with the Monster Mountain Man Braun Strowman, and it was also the ring collapsing again, but it was pretty amazing though. I think that was one of Big Show's big rivalry feuds at the time. And he made a little appearance here in the WWE and recently getting tagged with Randy Orton on the fourth. of January of 2021 to, I guess, as part of Legends Night that night. That was Big Show's last appearance at WWE. As of yesterday, in real life, he's not signed by AEW, which I thought that was not going to happen. So that when I heard that news, that was kind of like a big shock, to me. So I think Big Show's going to have some success over there. Whether it's commentary or wrestling in the ring, like the returning Sting. But I think as far as true giants go in WWE or any wrestling organization that matters, Big Show has to be named one of these top five giants ever. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. It really is. And we'll be right back, and we'll talk about Andre the Giant next on my full episode of my podcast. All right, welcome back to a special episode of Guy Empire Wrestling, featuring Shoji Mahonis, and now we'll talk about one of the probably the greatest giant, well, in my opinion, of WWE's history. We're gonna talk about the great eighth wonder of the world, Andre the Giant. And I recently watched a documentary for HBO a couple years back now, and it's pretty amazing how Andre Giant was really vilified as match for vilified throughout his entire life for being that giant person. He was born in France, Paris, and it's pretty amazing. Like, he's got the way he talks, the way he brings himself about his lifestyle, and everything he's gone through, went through. It's pretty amazing just to think that. And at the time, you would see like these true colossal stars being the true giants of WWE, and go figure, because Andre Giant, if you people didn't notice, he was undefeated for 15 years. Before getting that one loss, which to me probably the greatest loss of all time for anybody that would be undefeated for 15 years prior, before losing to Hulk Hogan, and which is one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history at WrestleMania 3. Especially when the part, and everybody should know this by now if you're a true wrestling fan, about how Hulk Hogan picked up Andre Giant, which that was actually the first time Andre Giant had left his feet and being picked up from being on the ground and being slammed over your head by the immortal Hulk Hogan at the time. And that match was for the WWE Championship in the main WrestleMania 3 and Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, in Michigan. So it's pretty amazing to see that happen and see Hulk Hogan actually pin Andre Giant 1, 2, 3 and giving the Giant his first loss, not only in WWE's history, but his only professional wrestling career. You know, so that's my favorite. One of my favorite memories of Andre Giant. Even though I don't know complete not much about him, but I'm gonna say like my greatest moments about him, and it's pretty amazing too here, because even like going back to the body slam challenge, this is my one of my favorite wrestling moments of the '80s. You go out to the body slam match. I think it was WrestleMania 1 in MSG. Play him and Big John Studd. And Big John Studd was never body slammed at the time too, until Andre Giant had picked him up and body slammed him. And mind you, that was a body slam challenge for $100,000, I believe, of the Bobby to bring Heenan's own money. So it was pretty funny. After the match, Big Sh- the sorry, I'm about to say Big Show. Andre Giant would be awarded the money and then start throwing it out to the fans before Bobby Arena would collect that money back. It's pretty funny just to see Bobby Heenan just scurrying down the aisleway to the back, WrestleMania 1, and just like, you know, it's pretty cool though. It was one of those great moments you can actually feel good about, just watch over and over again. So, pretty amazing. But another good thing about Andre the Giant, he would be in the first main event of the Survivor Series, the Inaugural Survivor Series, on Thanksgiving Day in 1987, when he had Hulk Hogan's team facing Andre the Giant's team. And this is actually a pretty good appearance, pretty good appearance of any like team. So it's pretty surreal here, because the inaugural Survivor Series, you had these two teams, which were also colossal themselves. You know, it's pretty amazing. It really is. A pretty colossal team right here. Because Andre the Giant's team was considered a Butch Reed, King Kong Bundy, and the One Man Gang, who were all big men on the team too. So I'm thinking, okay, these guys are even Rick Rude. Rick Rude's probably the smaller person of the team. Even though Rick Rude with the nice body and the gorgeous abs, I gotta admit, as a man, I will say this: Rick Rude had a hell of a body back in 1987. One of those bodies that you can just admire, because it's a lot of hard work. But we're not here to talk about Rick Rude's body. or any of those anatomy for that asset. We're talking about Andre Giant, specifically this main event match here. And he would go against Hulk Hogan's team of Bam Bam Bigelow, Don Morocco, Hulk Hogan, Ken Pantera, and Paul Orndorff, who are also big guys themselves in their own right, being accompanied by Oliver Humperdinck. And and people didn't know this, not all the time. Every time Andre Giant and Hulk Hogan face off, Andre Giant would lose because Andre Giant's team actually would defeat Hulk Hogan's team in the inaugural Survivor Series main event here in 22 minutes. So I'll go back and watch this matchup because it was actually a pretty good one at that too. So yeah, it's a pretty good Survivor Series matchup itself, you know. But they will not be a total letdown for Hulk Hogan and Andre Giant because probably one of the most infamous matches that would get, I think, 30 million viewers to tune in was the main event that took place in February of 1988. You know, this is pretty surreal here because if you have a main event advertised, which you're gonna have two of the biggest stars of the time, Hulk Hogan and Andre Giant, for free on network cable television, such as the main event, it's pretty, pretty amazing here. It really is. So, you have, the main event. It's pretty cool here, and you will see like this match take place. You know, and even though it wasn't that long of a matchup though, but the only controversy in the matchup was when Andre Giant would take down Hulk Hogan, and then you have the referee Brian Hebner, or not Brian Hebner, sorry, Earl Hebner, counting 1, 2, 3. Even though clearly you see Hulk Hogan's shoulder get up before the actual 2 count, the referee still counted 1, 2, 3. I'm like, okay, Andre Giant wins in 9 minutes, but then Hulk Hogan just kicked out, and they think so. Okay, something weird's going on here. Something was going on here, and then you hear Andre Giant take the microphone and say, "Oh, it's about the championship to Ted DiBiase." And I'm like, what the fuck? Does this mean Ted DiBiase is the champion now? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, and then behind the scenes, what people didn't know at the time, until it came to light about 10, 20 years later, was that Ted DiBiase had paid the referee to screw Hogan. But not only that, he wasn't the official referee. He wasn't actually Earl Hebner, which means he was somebody else that got paid to do a certain face surgery to look like Earl Hebner. When Earl Hebner came to the ring, and confronted the fake Earl Hebner, the surgically repaired Earl Hebner, or whatever you want to call him, the fake Earl Hebner, and you see Hulk Hogan trying to grab both men and trying to think, well, who the hell's the real referee? Like, who's the real Earl Hebner? And of course, the real one evidently fight the fake one. The fake one can't fight. The other one, Earl Hebner, if you're gonna be refereeing the business for so many years, you're gonna some wrestling moves or two. And then you see Hogan finally beating up the fake Earl Hebner, for screwing for the championship. But thank God the dead president at the time, Jack Tunney, didn't allow this to continue because he was stripped. Well, at least not stripped because Ted DiBiase wasn't really the champion, but take away the championship of and hold up for ransom until they had a tournament WrestleMania 4 in um in New Jersey at Trump Plaza, in which at a tournament where it came down to Ted DiBiase and Randy Savage, in which Randy Savage did win by pin Ted DiBiase went to 3 to become the new WWE champion. At the time. Yeah, I gotta admit, Randy Savage was one of my favorite WWE champions. Even though it lasted for a full year, and she lost to Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 5 when the so-called Mega Powers exploded. That was pretty cool too. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to see like, how much Andre had an impact on in WWE itself. But not many, would think, that too, badly of, Andre Giant. You know, it's pretty surreal here because I think at that point his career was starting to like wind down a little bit. You know, as far as like a wrestling substantial point goes. You know, so it wasn't too bad. His heel turn didn't really last too much until the year 1990, so it was still pretty cool. But here's one of my favorite things though. He would go up and create the Colossal connection. You know, he's joined by the fellow Heenan family member Haku to perform the Colossal collection. That was pretty cool. Because it filled the void that left Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, known as the Brainbusters, of WCW. So it's like those two leaving, and then these two teams coming on here. It was pretty cool because the Cross Connection immediately targeted one of my favorite WWE tag teams in history, Demolition, at the time, Axis Smash. So, eventually, it led to a match taped and televised on December 13th, 1989, in which they defeated Demolition to win the tag team championships. And they would get that rematch with, Demolition for championship at WrestleMania 6 in 1990. So it's pretty cool. Even though they lost the belts at the time, it was still actually a pretty good match. So you see that match go back and forth. It's like not two, but four heavy bangers, like going up to WrestleMania 6 in Toronto at the time. So it's kind of one of those good tag team matches that you didn't want to miss, So it's pretty cool. I think after that night, I think it was just little appearance here and there by Andre the Giant. And, it's still pretty cool. He would come in every once in a while. My favorite thing, he was doing special interview segments with Captain Lou Albano to put over the UWF, the United Wrestling Federation at the time. So it was pretty cool to like see that as far as like talking goes and on-screen appearances at the time. So it wasn't too bad. But this is the thing: his last U.S. championship, U.S. television appearance was a brief interview on WCW's World Championship Wrestling at Clash of Champions 20 special that aired on TBS on September 2nd, 1992. Which he had talked about his long wrestling career winding down and all that as well. So it wasn't really too bad. Evidently, things led to the worst because, he eventually died in his sleep from a congestive heart failure on January 27, 1993. The whole world lost a true giant that night when another giant had passed away. And unfortunately, it left the wrestling world in a big shock that one of the greatest wrestlers and true giants in their company's history suffered heart failure and died in his sleep. It was sad. He was cremated and disposed of. And upon his death in Paris, his family in France had held a funeral for him, intended to bury him near his father. Of course, that was his wish. And when they learned his wish to be cremated, his body was flown to the United States, where he was cremated according to his wishes, of course. His ashes were scattered on a ranch in North Carolina. In addition to his will, according to his will, he left his whole entire estate and sold beneficiary to his daughter Robin. So it was pretty sad to like see him go off like that, you know. So but it wasn't too bad though, because in that same 1993 he was inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame, so it's not too bad. And he would actually have a battle royal, which nowadays WWE use, except with the exception last year, WWE didn't hold last year. But every year WrestleMania since WrestleMania 30, we would hold the Andre Giant Memorial Battle Royal. That was won by guys like of super strength, like guys like Cesaro, Big Show, Mojo Rawley, Baron Corbin, and such, Braun Strowman. And so, so at least his death wasn't too passed on. It will still be remembrance. So it's pretty amazing. Like I said, if you see the documentary, look up on the HBO, channel or the HBO Max app, you see Andre Giant and just learn more about this man because he was just more than the eighth wonder of the world in life. He was a true giant, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and maybe one of the most controversial wrestlers back in the '80s. But he truly made an impact for every giant that you see nowadays to continue in his footsteps. All right, well, we'll be right back after these messages. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the conclusion on this episode of the Colossal Giants of the WWE. I have to talk about this. Let's not forget one of those other giants that really made name for themselves in WWE. Guys like Psycho Sid, who was also a former two-time champion by defeating Shawn Michaels in '96 and Bret Hart via controversy in a steel cage match on Raw in '97. Who can I forget about Big Daddy Cool Diesel? Oh man, the first ever Triple Crown winner in 1994, domination of the Royal Rumble in 1994, defeating Bob Backlund for championship in 8 seconds in MSG in November '94 after breaking off with his former best friend, tag partner Shawn Michaels during that time, and would hold championship for damn near a year. That's pretty incredible itself. And go on to WCW to form the NWO and become WWE champion, a potential president of the WWE company at the time, and still continue his impact in TNA Wrestling's impact. And at the time, just being Big Sexy. That's what he was known for. And let's not forget the Monster King. This big guy that comes into WWE had a few distinct characters at the time before he actually became King in '97. Debuting in the first ever Hanson match and cost his brother the match to Shawn Michaels, and just leading a career that Daniel lasted 20 years in WWE. Still to this day, still makes appearances. His recent appearance at the 2021 Royal Rumble match, after being eliminated by Damien Priest, now a new member of Monday Night Raw. It's pretty amazing. So we look back and we think about all giants that paved the way through history. It's pretty amazing. Even guys like Big John Studd, Bam Bam Bigelow, King Kong Bundy, Abdullah the Butcher, the world's strongest man Mark Henry, Braun Strowman, and one of my favorites to this very day, right now WWE's history, Keith Lee, who was dominating and making our true giants learn that even giants can fly too. It's pretty amazing here. I love the giant matches in WWE. I like the big matches. Like people think like watching two people boring because it's gonna last like a couple seconds and move slower. Really appreciate these guys for getting into the ring and doing some of the stuff that no normal giant can do. It's pretty amazing. They're not only giants, but they're superstars. They're super heavyweights. They're larger than life characters that we can really appreciate it and look back on. But I'm excited next week to announce the episode that I'm going to be talking about is the Woman of Wrestling. On 1997, when China first appeared, when we had Sunny on the scene doing commentary and Sable just dipping her foot into the water of the wrestling world, all the ways to women like Candice Michelle and the late great Ashley Mazzaro, and even WWE still Hall of Fame and now in commentary for NXT, Beth Phoenix becoming one of the most dominant women champions of all time. It's gonna be amazing. We don't get to mention like women like Stephanie McMahon, Lita, even the WWE Hall of Fame herself, and from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Trish Stratus. We're going to talk about next week on God I Have Heart Wrestling Podcast by me. It's going to be fun. I think I have fun this episode. We're definitely going to have fun next week. Don't forget, we're just about 2 months away from my episode debuting on YouTube as far as God I Have Heart Wrestling Podcast. It's going to be fun. We're all going to have fun that day. And yeah, keep thanking the Giants for paving our way for WWE to give us those bigger than life exciting matches. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tune in until Friday SmackDown this Friday night, and even leading up until WWE's Fastlane event Sunday, March 21st, which will now be on the new Peacock Network in the United States, and even WWE Net subscribers for outside the United States as well. Thank you guys for joining me on this podcast, and have a good day.